everybody. Welcome to One More with Danny Coleman. I'm Danny Coleman, and this is Monmouth Music. We are coming to you live from Monmouth Music right here on One More. One More is sponsored by Antoinette Boulangerie, the purveyor of these beautiful, would you say they're beautiful pastries?
I would say they're absolutely
exquisite.
lovely. Yes, yes, they smell very good too.
Okay. Well, you're welcome to have one.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll give you a napkin there. And by the Downtown All-Stars of Red Bank, as well as Mario Di Bartolo and Monmouth Music. Take a sip of coffee, or I'm going to cough. I stopped and bought cough medicine, Nash. You know what? I forgot to take it. See that? It's terrible. Well, once again, thank you so much for tuning in this week. If it's Monday, it's One More with Danny Coleman, and we here at One More, we want to make sure if there's anything that you want to see or hear, please email me at dcoleman.droice, D-R-I-C-E, dcoleman.droice@gmail.com, and we'll see what we can do, excuse me, about getting it on the air for you. Tonight, my guest is her. There we go. Having a coughing fit. That's better. I didn't cough the entire time we were sitting here talking,
I know,
did I?
you
Right?
did great. It was only...
It must be like red light fever. It just kind of blast. My guest this evening is Miss Jenn Hamilton. You know, it's very rare that you know violinists, right? Is that the proper term, violinist?
Yes.
Okay, violinist. I have one this week, as in you.
Yeah.
Then I have one next week.
Oh, you're finding them all over the
Back
place.
to back. They've like come out of the woodwork. Actually, yeah, next week we have Greg Holt, who used to be the official fiddle player for the Tampa Bay Lightning in the NHL.
Oh, okay.
So, and he'll be here next week. So back to back. I probably should have spaced them out, Nash. What do you think?
I think it's fine.
Think it's fun? Okay, well, but yes, we are here, and we have a violin there, courtesy brought to you by.
Monmouth Music of Red Bank.
That's right. Now I brought Jenn in because she's a local musician. She's also a. Are you an international touring musician? Did you go over to
Not
Europe?
yet.
Not yet.
Not
Okay.
yet.
She was a national touring musician with the Wizards of Winter. That show, as you may remember. She's a violin teacher. You just did your first recording session.
Yesterday, yeah.
Or yesterday.
Yesterday. Yeah,
Yesterday.
fresh out of the studio.
And you're involved with a couple of different music projects now.
Yes.
So life is good for you.
Life is. It's picked up very, very quickly. It all happened very fast from basically the middle of last year. And it just started happening.
Great.
The least I could do was say, I'll try.
Yeah, right? What's the difference? You try, you fail. You know?
Exactly.
You fail, you try again.
Exactly.
Kind of like this show. You know, if I fail, I try again. What's the difference? Every week I'm here trying again. So, okay. Take us chronologically. What has brought you to this point, other than my email? What has brought you? When did you start playing the violin?
The violin specifically, I think I was about 10 when I started playing violin, but I'd been playing piano for several years before. Learning a musical instrument was basically a requirement in my family, not a bad requirement at all. But I started on piano, and after a little while, I decided I wanted to try something else. I had a specific interest in the violin. And so for a little while, I tried to play both instruments. I just couldn't keep up with that. So eventually, I switched mainly to the violin.
Now, what made you choose that over the piano?
It was kind of a very specific reason that I never really got to chase down, unfortunately. What it was is that my father used to call square dances when I was a little girl.
There you go.
And so I
okay.
had the brilliant idea that I would be a good enough violinist or fiddle player, if you want to put it that way, to be able to play with him at square dances. And I really got pushed in the direction of classical music, mostly from my teachers. There wasn't very much encouragement to be able to take the violin into other genres. And so I met a lot of resistance. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll teach you, one little fiddle tune just for fun. I was like, okay, well, teach me more. It's like, oh no, you got to finish this curriculum book so you can be ready for a competition next year.
Ooh.
Things like that. So
they put pressure on you.
yes, yeah, a lot of
outset.
pressure.
Okay.
I very clearly remember a conversation with my first violin teacher when I asked her, has anybody ever tried to play, Kansas or Black Sabbath on the violin? And the answer I essentially got was violins don't do that.
Have they ever heard Kansas?
Well, that was my confusion too, but being a polite child, I don't think I brought that point up. Right? But I'm happy to say that I'm currently proving that the violin can indeed do things like that, as have many other artists. It's become more popular along the years.
It's funny. I sit back and I watch, and recently I had the pleasure of interviewing Dennis Drew and Mary Ramsey from 10,000 Maniacs.
Okay.
Now, Natalie Merchant brought the violin out front and center in a rock band.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite rock bands is Flogging Molly.
Okay.
And, they're heavy duty on the Celtic violin. And I also noticed that the other thing that's making a comeback is the accordion.
Yes, yes, I've seen that too.
These older instruments, and they're being embraced by a whole new generation.
I think a lot of mindsets have really opened up recently about what instruments can do what in certain genres.
Okay.
I've noticed a definite shift in classical music from when I was a little girl to more recently. I think people have realized that in order to keep music thriving, you have to be able to be open to options. You have to be willing to try things. They may not work out. Maybe you decide that your ukulele sounds terrible with your heavy metal band, but you were at least able to give it a shot. Yeah, there you go. Metal, it could be something. You never know. But I have noticed generally a more open mindset lately. I think I've just realized that a closed mindset ends up driving away musicians, kind of like what happened with me. When I was a teenager, I got burnt out from playing. I thought the day I turned 18, I'd be done with it, and I would never play again. I was ready to completely ready to walk away from it, completely ready. But then I got pulled. Yeah, I know what you meant. And then I got pulled into my college orchestra. They were just starting out. They were really desperate for players. So I thought, okay, you know what? I haven't played in a big orchestra before. Maybe this will give me a chance to kind of hide a little bit and heal a little bit. Maybe have some fun playing where I'm not constantly the center of attention as a solo artist. Okay. And I played with them all 4 years of my college experience. I had a blast with them. A lot of sight reading? A lot of sight reading, yeah. And it brought me to a lot of things that I think sometimes classical musicians get shortchanged on a little bit in terms of being able to interpret and read their music fluently. Okay. The curriculum I went through as a young violinist was very good about teaching your ear and teaching techniques and your muscle memory, but it really did not encourage you to be able to critically think about your sheet music, to be able to solve rhythms, to be able to do that on the fly. I realized when I got to college that I didn't know how to read sheet music that wasn't being openly demonstrated for me.
Oh, wow.
So that was a little bit of a culmination. So, and reteach myself a lot of critical thinking processes. Playing in bands where I'm forced to rely on my ear, I need to know my key, I need to know my music theory a lot more solidly. Have happened a lot more smoothly for me, as a growing musician, but I think that's also feeling this, but that it can be overcome. That's a really big part of who I am.
Now, but you're also a teacher.
I am a teacher, yes.
Now, just based on what you told me, it sounds to me like there was a lot of pressure on you from your educators in the violin. How do you do that? How do you balance that with your students? Because, I'm a firm believer in children, learn what they live.
Yes.
So if you're brought up to think that's the only way that you're going to learn how to play the violin, now when you go to teach somebody, there's a good chance you may teach in the same vein. Is that the case? Or did you just go the other way and say, you know what, I'm not doing that?
I try to have a healthy balance of both, and it actually relies a lot on what that particular student is interested in doing and why they're there in my studio. Very often it's because mom dragged them in for lessons, So then I have the mindset of, okay, I need to find out what these students' interests are. I need to make them the most positive experience I can for them. Even if they decide in several years that they don't want to play music anymore, they were at least exposed to a positive experience overall, and that they remember that there was an adult who taught them that they could do something if they put their head to it, even if that's all they get out of it. If I have a student come to me and says, I'm in the ABRSM grade 4, I want to be ready for a competition in 6 months, I'll say, all right, pedal to the metal, and they have an extremely strict schedule for that. It really depends on what their personal goals are. And
so you take it as a student by student case.
I take it student by student, very much so.
You don't have a rigid method that you use.
No, I have, oldies but goodies that I go back to in terms of curriculum, but I try to really individualize what I teach them. Teaching the basics, if I have a student who wants to play rock and pop, I tell them that's great. You need to learn some classical stuff too. You need to know how to play your scales. You need the techniques that classical teaches you, because if you think about it, classical violin is the way that the violin has been navigated for many, 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 many years.
Centuries.
There's a reason that classical techniques work on the violin. So you need to know how to do all this. I get it might be dry. We'll do fun stuff too, but you have to know and have a solid foundation classically.
You have to be able to play, some classical piece before you get to Cotton Eye Joe.
Yes, because the techniques you're going to use to play fun, quick, fancy fiddle music or hard, heavy metal, those are all things that come back to just knowing your scales, knowing your instrument. And how do you know your instrument? You play etudes, you play scales, you do exercises that constantly teach you where everything is. As you noted earlier, there's no frets on this instrument.
I know. There's no frets. There's no, I'll be fretting pretty soon, I think. There's no frets. There's, you don't know. I watched your Facebook Live the other day. I was actually at work. And I watched your Facebook Live, and I didn't realize some of the things that you were saying about playing the violin. As far as, if you're tapping or you're I don't know, whatever the term is that you use, I can't remember. If you're using the bow across the things, or you're tapping or plucking, and there's all kinds of different. I found it fascinating, actually.
I'm glad you did.
I didn't get to watch the entire thing because I had to move on from where I was, but I really didn't know that.
And usually when people try to pick up this instrument, they are surprised by how many subtleties have to come together for just one note to sound even decent. One of the first things that I tell all my students, regardless if they're really tiny or an adult, I tell them, usually when you come to this instrument, you're focused on having it sound great right away. Because when people hear a violinist play, that's what they get wrapped up in, is the sound, right? I said, with this instrument, you have to get the posture, the position, the mindset, the technique, the way you move your arm and your bow hand, where you're putting your fingers for your notes. All of that has to happen first, and then that invites the nice sound.
Have you ever heard those two women who do nothing but metal tunes on a violin? I can't remember what their names are. Nash, you know who they are?
Yeah.
Tom? They're two.
It sounds like I can't come up with the name either.
But they do nothing but like heavy metal, thrash metal tunes on violin.
It can be done.
It's like those two ladies they're called Harptalica. They play Metallica tunes on a harp.
Yeah.
So it can be done. It's
We've got the brothers who are cello players too. And they've done a lot of heavy metal and adaptation.
Oh yeah, I don't remember their name either.
I should.
We'll just Nash. We're gonna change the name of the show to Draw a Blank with Danny Coleman. But I find it fascinating, and
I think it's wonderful to see, especially stringed instruments, like really making an impact elsewhere, and it gets people's attentions. Like when they hear a violin stuck in with your guitar and your bass, maybe a saxophone, and then they're like, that was actually a really cool flavor in there. It adds a sweetness, and an emotion to it that sometimes, if it's just all yelling metal, sometimes feels a little dry at times. So done right, it can really make an impact on what you're hearing.
No, and I think it's incredible. Like I said, one of my favorite bands is Flogging Molly, and I love the fiddle, the way they use it in there. Actually, I went to Ireland for 15 days.
Oh yeah.
About 8 or 9 years ago now, or so they tell me.
You have to take their word for it.
I have to take their word for it. I had a good time, I'll tell you that.
Did they have to tell you that too?
Yeah, they pretty much. I kept trying to drink the country dry of Guinness, and they just kept making more.
I was going to say, you're in Ireland, you're not going to drink them dry.
Yeah, no, they beat me to it. But one of the things I found fascinating was there's two different music communities. There's the West Coast, which is all the traditional hardcore Celtic
Okay.
Irish music, and then there's the East Coast, Dublin and that whole thing, where it's the more upbeat pop.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Because, as a matter of fact, I was at a pub on the West Coast, and I asked the guy for an Irish tune. Now, the band I was in at the time, we used to do. And he looked at me and says, "You've got to go to the East Coast for that." So I was like, "Oh, man." So I asked somebody, they were very annoyed with me. That's all right. Have another beer. Yeah, but right now we're going to talk about the pastries. The pastries. Sure you don't want one?
Not right now.
Okay, not right now. Fine. Antoinette Boulangerie specializes in creating delicate and sophisticated works of art using only the highest quality ingredients. Located at 32 Monmouth Street, right here in the heart of downtown Red Bank, they are a fully operational bakery with all of the baking done on premises daily. In addition to the handmade variety of croissants and Danish, Antoinette's offers a dizzying array of traditional French pastries, macaroons, cookies, and savory treats. Find them at AntoinetteBoulangerie.com. And I want to thank them for the pastries and the coffee and the great treats, as I said. Right, Nash? Great treats.
Oh, and that band with the two players. Metal Cohen, I believe.
What is it?
Metal Cohen.
Oh, okay. That doesn't sound familiar, but I'll take your word for it. I'll take your word for that. What do you have?
Got a note?
Oh, we have a note.
We have a letter. We got mail.
There we go. Oh, we have mail. I didn't hear anything. Bing. Aha. Ooh. Brave Sir Bevier wants to know where to get lessons from Jenn.
You can get lessons from me up at Octopus Music School. They have locations in New Brunswick and in Hillsborough.
Oh, okay. All right. New Brunswick and Hillsborough, Matt. Send that out over the masses, over the wire.
We already did.
Oh, okay. That's right. Why don't you send it out again?
It's an excellent school. I really love working for them. Okay. Really, really do.
That's kind of a haul for you, right? Aren't you
a little bit
in the shore community?
I live in Freehold.
Oh, okay.
So it's
you're in Freehold. Okay,
yeah, so it's about a 45-minute commute for me,
right.
Which overall I really don't mind because it's a fantastic school. I've worked in studios before where teacher collaboration wasn't really encouraged, or perhaps often the business owner was not a musician or an educator themselves, so they didn't understand the needs of the teachers to really be effective. That's not the case here. My boss is an awesome musician and an educator himself, so he's always on board with the teachers. We constantly collaborate with each other. We take a lot of special needs students too, which is a really awesome and fun challenge for us.
I'm sure, yeah.
And just an amazing experience too for the children and their families.
I find there are a couple of special needs people that I've worked with in the past, and I realized that it's great therapy.
Oh, it is.
It's great therapy for them. It helps them gain confidence. It helps them with their coordination.
It really does.
Focus.
And even if it's just a student, if all we're able to do with them is give them, a little rhythm instrument like shaker eggs and just sing songs along with them, if that's all they're capable of, it makes their day. Yeah. It really does. And often our special needs students are actually extremely gifted too. Some of my students have perfect pitch. I could hum them a song, they can turn around and play it on the piano. Without having to hear it again. They're often extremely good at picking out the exact subtleties of music.
So you enjoy what you do? I
do. I really, really love what I do.
That's great. Now you and do you do this on a regular school calendar, or?
No, it's specifically a music school. So usually during the school year, we're teaching in the after school into the evening hours.
Oh, okay.
So obviously we keep different summer hours.
Gotcha.
But usually we cater to the after school hours.
After school hours.
Yes.
Okay. So. You've done something with the Wizards of Winter that I've wanted to do my whole life. Play to 20,000 people, 30,000 people. What is that like to tour with an operation like that and to do that, night after night and see?
It was fun. It was an amazing experience. I knew it would be a tiring one. There's a lot of comfort that you're giving up for the immediate moment.
Living out of a suitcase for
you're living out of a
right?
suitcase. Sometimes it's really cold off stage, and sometimes you're really feeling exhausted that day. Maybe the hotel the night before wasn't a great sleep or something like that. But really, once you get caught up into the show, like, you forget all that.
Oh, I'm sure.
You really do. And in terms of like the amount of people, sometimes I have remarks given to me. It's like, how do you get up there in front of all those people? And for me, it's like, if I can play in front of one person, I could play in front of 100,000. Right. There comes a point where the mindset that you need to be able to contain yourself and also put yourself out there that much, there comes a point where there's no difference in the numbers. That's at least how I found that it worked for me.
Exactly. I know a drummer who, by the name of Vinny Lopez, who was the first drummer in the E Street Band.
Oh, okay.
He's on the first 2 Bruce albums, And he said to me one time, he's like, Danny, once you're up there, you can't even see past first 3 rows.
I was about to say, with the stage lights too, you don't
see anything.
You might get a glint of glasses or something once in a while, but you can't see past the first 3 rows anyway.
Now, there's a saxophone player from this area. He actually lives in Red Bank, named Michael Gagan. And Michael was playing with Cirque du Soleil, the Michael Jackson show that they had going on.
Very cool.
And that was full of stringed instruments. It was just, they used it in an almost violent way, and it was really cool. It was really cool. So, but that's great that you got that opportunity.
Oh, it was an incredible opportunity.
Would you answer an ad, or did somebody contact you?
I did answer an ad. That's how nuts it was.
There was a guitar player back in the 80s by the name of Punky Meadows.
Okay.
Punky Meadows was in a band called Angel, and he stopped playing for like 30 years after the band. After Angel split up, he said, "I'm done with the music business." He opened up a spa. He became a stock aficionado.
Went and did everything else.
Kept playing, but he was done playing.
Done performing.
And then, thanks to today's technology, he comes across this Facebook page that's got Angel fans. And he's like,
what's this?
Maybe I still got something here. So he reassembles a band, and he's gone out on his own called Punky Meadows. Well, 2 of the players are fellas named Charlie Cav and Chandler Mogul, who are, Charlie's from this area, and Chandler lives in New York, but they've been on my radio program before. And he said that when you get out there and you go out there, and it's just like, it's this totally new. Now you're crossing generation gaps.
Yes.
There, because Punky wanted him to asked him if he could do an impersonation, put your best David Cassidy forward, from the Partridge Family. And Chandler's like, I don't even know who that is.
Who's that?
But so there's a certain dichotomy that goes with that. But doing what you did with the Wizards and what Michael did with Cirque du Soleil, it was you're playing to all ages.
Yes.
People love it. So you really don't have that fear of, are we going to go over? Of course you're going to go over, because they're paying money to buy tickets. So.
Exactly. And that was a lot of the appeal, too, was playing in that genre, is that it's a family show.
Right.
So I really love that we had an audience of all ages. That was really special for me.
That's great. Fantastic. That's one of my bucket list items as a musician. Probably the biggest amount of people I've ever played in front of is 700 or 800. I want to know what it's like to play in front of 20 or 30,000.
Loud.
Yeah, I'm sure. I can imagine the adrenaline rush that you must get at some point.
I found, at least in my personal process of a public performance, is I'll be a little nervous the 3-4 minutes before. I'll be ready. I'm off stage, I'm ready. I'm never late. I'm always ready a little bit before. I'm going through, it's okay, do I have my wireless in the right spot? I'm kind of going through my mental checklist of everything. It's are we ready for takeoff here? And then once we start, then I'm in the zone.
You just slip right in.
Yes. Yeah. Yep, right into it. And the next thing you know, the show's over.
Yeah.
Yeah. What seems like a really long track at the very first song of the very first set, also done.
Now, is that the first time you ever toured nationally. Yeah, being away from home that long.
Yes,
for that
and
long
I'm
period of
very,
time.
very grateful to.
I was talking to you before we went on the air that I did some things with Ringling Brothers.
Yeah.
No, I was not in the circus, Matt. I can hear your brain going out there in the production room. But I've done some works with Ringling Brothers with the band leader and he said, that band was something I told you. I sat in the orchestra pit during the circus, so I was right down on the floor.
Oh, that must have been a rush.
It was one. It's still to this day is one of the top 3 things I think I've done as an entertainment writer. And but that band consisted of a bass player, a drummer, a guitarist, a keyboard player, trumpet, sax, flute. It was like 8 or 9 pieces. And the orchestra leader was the trumpet player. He told me he gives on average 206 cues.
Yeah, that sounds about
during
right.
a 2.5 hour circus, Now, is that what like with your on stage? Is there certain cues, or do you just have to learn the music?
It's different between a pit and then a show like the Wizards.
Right.
We definitely have a groove and expectations of what's to come. With a pit, especially when you're playing to a live performance, you have the certain flow of, you're playing along, you have the rhythm you expect, and there might be points where you have to stop and wait for whatever's going on on the stage, or in this case, the ring, and then be prepared to react and move on. So there's kind of a whole nother level of awareness, because the pit orchestra isn't the main attraction.
Right.
They're just a soundtrack. People should hear them, but they shouldn't be hearing them so much they're paying only attention. It should blend in with the rest of the performance. So that's the point of a pit orchestra, rather than more of like a theater show.
Theater show like what you're
Yes.
doing. Great. If you're just clicking on, this is One More with Danny Coleman. That's Jenn Hamilton, violinist. And what else? Do you still dabble with the piano at all?
I do. I actually still teach beginner piano.
Oh,
I
do you?
use piano a lot in my general music classes for like my really, really tiny little students. They're not quite ready for something because like the complexity of the violin. But I do teach piano, and then I have string students. I've taught viola too, since it's very similar to the violin.
Do you have one of those as well?
Technically, yes. My 5-string electric that I play with the Wizards, that beautiful red.
The one that everybody was
that beautiful
complimenting
red
in your
beast.
picture? Yeah.
It's a 5-string. Okay, so it means that it has the top 4 strings of a violin, and then it has one more string added onto the bottom, a low C string. So that's actually a violin and a viola in one.
Okay.
Because violin and viola share 3 common strings, the 3 lower ones. So if you put another one on the bottom, you've got a viola too.
Okay.
So I have that extra range. So technically, yes, I have a viola. I do not have a separate acoustic instrument that is only a viola, though, to answer your question.
Now, what's the difference between playing an acoustic violin and an electric one?
It depends on the instruments, but really it comes down to an acoustic will often give you a lot more character in its tone. That's why they're still really popular for like folk, fiddle, bluegrass, because they lend an extremely distinct voice when they're played. You also have a lot more to control in terms of their intonation, their sounds, because it is working off of sheer, reverberation off the body. So there's a lot more that you have to control and handle. With an electric, especially mine, with it being a solid body and it doesn't have an acoustic chamber on it at all, it's much more straightforward. So you have a much more basic control of your sound, but it doesn't add quite the sweetness that an acoustic will have.
I guess, I guess a violin, kind of like an acoustic guitar, has somewhat of natural reverb to
Yes,
it,
I was just about to say, it's a lot like going between an acoustic guitar and an electric guitar. Also playing on electric violin, especially when you're playing out of a sound system that's over there somewhere, you're a little bit more removed from your sound. With an acoustic, it's right here. You hear each and every tiny little squeak and squawk and note that's going on. It's extremely responsive, gives you a lot of feedback. On the electric, your sound's over there. You'll still feel some vibration, still hear it a little bit here, but you're not getting the depth of acoustic feedback that you would off of this.
I remember I think it's 3rd or 4th grade in the area where I live and grew up is where they start to allow students to play instruments.
Yeah,
and
middle
like
schools.
The violin.
Many of my students are middle school
violin,
students.
saxophone, and like the snare drum or something. Right?
Yeah, your basic band or orchestra instruments.
Right. And I remember my buddy's kid decided they wanted to play the violin, and it sounded like two cats fighting. I was like, oh my Lord.
And it will for a while, unfortunately. I remember clearly when I was first learning to play, my family had a cat. When I would stand up and play, she would come and literally start scratching and biting my ankles.
To stop.
Just like, stop it, please. My other cat would go sleep in my open violin case.
Oh, there you go.
He couldn't have cared.
Couldn't care
any
less.
Yeah, it's not an instrument that usually parents are happy to hear that their child wants to learn, because it's going to be a while before they sound any good.
Try being a drummer.
There's that too. You can at least get practice pads or something.
You can. You can. Not the same, but you can.
Not the
yes.
same, but you can.
Although with electronic drums now, you can just stick headphones in.
Stick headphones
and,
in, yeah.
You can go that route if you wanted to. Right, Nash?
Yeah, that route.
But you know who doesn't go that route, Nash?
Who?
The Downtown All-Stars of Red Bank.
Oh.
They never do that. Keep your eyes open for their next charity compilation CD, which is called Magic on the Navasink. It just was released February 22nd.
Brand new.
Right here around the corner at the Red Bank Elks Lodge. Magic on an Navasink features original works by artists such as Colossal Street Jam, Dawn Hopkins, DJ Pinelli, John Hathaway, Santa Ray, and many more. And it's being produced to benefit the Red Bank Elks Lodge number 233 Veterans Support Programs. Downtown All-Stars' first compilation disc, Bright Lights on Broad Street, was in support of Little Kids Rock, which provided free music instruction and instruments to underserved public school districts all across the United States. That's also available on the Downtown All-Stars website and from select retailers. The Downtown All-Stars of Red Bank, LLC, is a collective of local musicians and performing artists bound together through the immeasurable power of music to raise awareness for charities, funds, and worthy causes. So you can find them at redbankallstars.com, or you can follow them on Facebook at facebook.com/redbankallstars. So, well, now you got so much to talk about.
I know.
You've also got some recording under your belt, as we touched on at the beginning of the program. You're working with two different artists, right?
Yes. So my very first official recording session, meaning where I got called into a separate studio, I was given rough mixes a few days beforehand. That was just yesterday.
There you go.
That is for a band called Mikkel's Plot.
Okay.
They're a hard rock and metal band right out of here in Central New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And they got in touch with me after seeing some of the other adventures
Okay.
I've been up to, and said, we've got some rough mixes. We're trying to float past each other, see what we make of them, see what you can come up with for them.
And they liked what you did?
They did.
Well, that's good.
Especially for somebody coming from a background of needing sheet music and rehearsals, just being given a rough mix and a singer saying, I think it's in E minor, which is okay because it trains my ear really well. Being given that freedom is sometimes a little scary.
Say, you're kind of in an envious position, or enviable position, because, they say to you, we want violin here. Do something.
Yeah.
And what are they going to do? Tell you it's wrong? If it's guitar, well, I don't like that note, I don't like that lead, do it again.
Right.
How many people use violins in metal? So, although it's becoming bigger, I realize.
Yes, absolutely.
But the point is that there's a good chance they're really going to like what you do after a couple of takes, and,
Yeah. So what I try to do in that event is have at least just a couple of ideas. Definitely have to pay attention to the structure of the song. What is it trying to do? Are there spots where the violin can echo the singer, or could it pick up on rhythm with the drums or the rhythm guitar? Could it echo? Could it add a counter melody somewhere? Is there a riff it could echo? And so there's a lot you can look for. It's a lot like playing in a jazz or blues band that tends to be free forms. You look for little things that give you an idea of what you can work with.
That's so funny. Somebody walked into the room I was in when I was watching your Facebook Live.
Uh-huh.
And the day before, I had Pandora on while I was, occupying myself in this room while I was working. And the same guy had walked in. He's like, "Oh, you're back here jamming, huh?" So when he saw the Facebook Live, he said, "Well, you're not jamming today?" I said, "No, I'm learning about the violin." I said, "I do a YouTube show, and this this lady's going to be on." He's like, "Oh, wow, really? Cool." He said, "What were you listening to yesterday?" I said, "I was listening to the Blues Channel on Pandora." And he says, "Oh, you like blues?" I said, "As a musician, I love blues because other than jazz, you're limited, in the words of my good friend Rio Clemente, you're limited only by how far your mind is willing to take you. There's no sheet music. There's no, nobody dictating anything. You're doing that, as you called it, free form. And it's great. It's all feel.
It is. And that's something that's a little scary sometimes to somebody coming from the classical background, because often classical musicians don't get trained to think on their feet. Or to know their music theory in such a way that they can adapt it in an instant.
You're trained to count bars and measures.
Yes, exactly. Which, again, is not a bad thing. You need to know how to do that as well. Right. It's just that's one reason why I looked for a band to join several years ago, because I was sick and tired of needing to be told what to do in order to play.
Right.
I knew it was going to be tough. I knew there was probably going to be some spectacular failed solos on my part. I found a small local band that was willing to let me jump in and just learn by trial with them, and then that gave me a lot of tools and confidence to be able to go for bigger stuff.
Now, what are you going to do if Mikkel's Plot says, "We want you to play with us permanently"?
We'll have to see. They still have to work with what I gave them yesterday, which was a lot of fun. I really liked their unique feel on some of the tracks that they gave.
What studio was it?
Acorn Digital out of Howell, New Jersey.
Acorn, okay, not familiar with that one.
It was a very wonderful experience. They were very good to me.
And you're working with another fellow.
Yeah, and then I also got contacted by a gentleman named Jack Anea. See, Jack, I said it correctly.
She was, where am I looking? There I am. She was worried about that, Jack. Trust me.
He reached out to me wanting to add violin possibly to his album that's in the works.
Okay.
He specializes in playing for seniors, especially those who may be suffering from Alzheimer's or other memory loss. And he often plays music that they would know from their childhood. So a lot of American folk, oldie songs, things like that. So he's looking to record or re-record on his new album, which will be called Remembering. So hopefully that'll be coming out relatively shortly. So he reached out and said, "I really want to put a violin in some of these songs." So I have all his rough mixes I'm going to be listening to starting tomorrow and seeing what I come up with for those.
So you'll be recording again?
I will be recording again.
So it's like feast or famine. Look at you.
I know.
The recording studio is a whole different animal, isn't it?
It is. And I was a little surprised by that yesterday because, again, being used to playing publicly or performing, and again, also in the classical world, it's people notice very much so when you make a mistake, and often they let it bother them. And so I've had to kind of learn to grow beyond my fear of making mistakes, which is something I encourage my students to do as well. Is that mistakes are a very natural part of a learning process. You have to do them in order to learn and improve. So yesterday when I got into the studio, I wasn't quite sure what to expect in terms of the process. And am I playing with a full band? Do they need me to get this on one pass?
Right. Especially since it's somebody else's money that you're,
exactly. And I was also I don't want to be wasting someone's time either. But I'd let them know, hey, I'm still learning a lot. I'm willing to give it a shot as long as you're okay with where I'm coming from. And they were. And so it took me probably about 4 passes on one song to really figure out what we were going to do with that one. Right. Often I've noticed with blues and jazz, you end up in lots of minor keys that, do lots of diminished notes and augmented notes and things like that. Those are very different and sometimes a little bit difficult for stringed instruments. So they had put out rough mixes.
Yeah, how do you transpose that? I mean,
Well, what I first tried to do when I first started trying to play jazz and blues was okay, here's the key. It could be any one of these minor scales because they all have a different form sometimes. And I found that was locking me in a little too much.
Okay.
So what I do is okay, I know we're in C minor, just for example. I was things might change, but I'm going to rely on my ear to tell me when they change. I know we're in C, so I know my root notes, for a C minor chord that I could always fall back on if I'm not really sure of what's going on. But then I would let my ear tell me what to do from there. It's like, oh, I heard we resolve on E there instead of an E flat, things like that.
Okay.
So, and that came quite in handy yesterday when they handed me music that was a little different from what I was used to playing, but it really lended a really cool sound. They ended up being very happy with what I was able to give them. So I'm really excited to hear what they mix of.
How long were you there?
About 2 hours.
Oh, it's not bad.
Yeah, it actually really wasn't for 2 songs. It was about 4 or 5 passes on the first and then 2 on the second.
And you spent longer than that with the sound guy trying to get the sound right?
Yes. Yeah, especially because we tried, I brought both of my violins. Actually, I brought both my acoustic and my electric because they weren't sure which they would want to go with eventually. So with an acoustic, of course, miking that, you can sometimes be a little tricky because I have to be close enough to a microphone, but I also need some room to bow. And move, so like finding the right balance there is a little tricky. With my electric, it's much more straightforward because I plug in just like a guitar, and he's got me right there on the PA, and he can do whatever he wants. So.
Yeah. Nice, very nice. What kind of violin do you play, by the way? Both acoustic and electric. What makes what? I'm not familiar with.
Acoustic violins, especially ones that go back 100 years or so. They tend to come from specific luthier shops. Usually you don't have like a brand name on them until much more recently when they were able to be factory made, or companies ended up, having a brand label out there. Electrics are a much different story. They tend to have brands or artist names on them. The electric violin that I play is made by a gentleman named John Jordan out in California. So they're called Jordan violins, and he hand makes them one by one out there. Custom. They are custom instruments. I was very, very fortunate to come across the one I play now because they're not easy to find. Usually when people have them, they keep them for a very good reason. It's a very nice instrument to play. It feels very much like an acoustic, so it's a very natural switch, going from an acoustic to that particular electric. Sometimes other electric violins tend to feel a little bit different, so it like affects your muscle memory, the way your hand feels out on the neck a little bit.
Yeah, is there a big weight difference?
There can be. It depends on the material. With my Jordan, one of the things I really appreciate about that is the, see out here at the end you have the large tuning pegs at the end of the instrument. On my Jordan, they're actually down here by my chin rest. So all the weight is right here on my shoulder. So I actually have a very light instrument, which makes it very nice to play for hours and hours on end. Some electrics, especially maybe some of the cheaper brands, tend to not be balanced quite as nicely, and you'll feel it. They start to drag you down a little bit. But a well-made electric should be just as light, if not lighter, than an acoustic.
How often do you still practice? I mean, you practice every day, I'm assuming, since you teach.
I try to. Even if all I get some practice in is just some scales and, remembering an etude from long ago, then, that's at least something, and a little bit that I've given my fingers to do that day. It's depending widely on what my students bring me. Sometimes they bring me something I've never seen before. I'm like, oh, I get to learn this too.
There you go.
So I'll learn that. And then also whatever projects I have on my plate, obviously that drives a lot of what I do.
Saturday night I went to Princeton University McCarter Theater to see a classical guitarist by the name of Sharon Isbin.
Okay.
Excuse me. And Sharon, that's what she said. Every day she's got to do something. And
got to do something.
This woman, she's won 4 Grammy Awards. And I was fortunate enough to have interviewed her a few weeks ago. But she was telling me on the phone, and she was telling me after the show that, it's constant motion.
Yes.
And to watch her right hand was just mesmerizing. And then her left. And, you don't have to worry about the right, but the left.
Oh, we still have to worry about the right with the bow.
Well, with the bow, but you're not plucking different strings.
No, you're absolutely correct.
It was like watching a spider. And but the left, especially with no frets. What's going on with that? I mean,
it's muscle memory.
Is that what it is?
It's muscle memory, and also your ear.
Right.
If you have a properly tuned instrument, if you know what a proper whole step and a proper half step sounds like, you should be able to play in tune. And it can be difficult. There are some days that even I have off days playing. I'm like, oh, this just is not going the way it should. Because on this instrument, it just takes a millimeter to be off.
Yeah.
You have to be extremely precise, which is why stringed instruments tend to be challenging, because you have to land in the exact same spot each and every time if you want that F sharp.
It always amazes me how you, like when I would watch, anybody from Charlie Daniels to, Itzhak Perlman,
Both of them fantastic.
and just the way that they, especially when they get going.
Oh, I know.
Is it Itzhak that does Flight of the Bumblebee?
Yes.
Yes. I'm like, are you kidding me?
I know, right?
I can appreciate it. I can never do it, but I can appreciate it. Yeah. Just like I appreciate Mario Nash, Mario DiBartolo, the owner of Monmouth Music, who lets us stay here every Monday night. Thank you, Mario. Established in 1987, Monmouth Music is located in the center of historic Red Bank. For 30 years, Monmouth Music has served the local and traveling musician with brand name instruments and accessories at everyday low prices. Monmouth Music welcomes aspiring musicians of all levels with a broad selection of affordable instruments for both sale and rental, including school orchestra instruments. That's you. Monmouth Music also provides lessons for students by their long-tenured teaching staff. In addition to providing brand-name instruments and complete lesson plans, Monmouth Music is also home to Bob Pinto's Guitar Hospital, specializing in string instrument repairs. There's also an in-house professional amplifier repair service by BP Electronics. Monmouth Music is owner-operated, which ensures you will get a professional and personal service every day. So come to Red Bank, New Jersey, and visit Monmouth Music. You won't be disappointed. And Mario will make sure of that. So Mario has graciously allowed us to have this violin here tonight for whatever demonstration you're going to do or make me do. This is when it gets good. Tom, this is when it gets good. You are still Tom, right? Back there? All right, good. Nash, I got to double without the hat. I don't know.
No.
The crew is very set here at One More with Danny Coleman. Nash is the self-professed god of flannel. Tom always wears a hat, and so when tonight he walked in, I'm like, who's this guy?
You didn't know who he was.
Karen's out there monitoring the chat room. Mike and Matt are, plotting the Earth's destruction. In between things out there, see?
Yep. You gotta have plans.
That's the crew, right? Yeah. Again, if you are interested in anything that we do here and maybe have a suggestion for something or someone you would like us to interview, email me at dcoleman.dreiss@gmail.com. Or if you'd like to sponsor One More with Danny Coleman, also email me at dcoleman.dreiss@gmail.com, and I will figure out how to handle that. So, but right now, that's what you need to do. So, what do you have going on now? When are the Wizards going back out on the road? Are they going back out on the road? Will you be going with them?
I will be going with them, but I can't confirm any tour dates or anything. But that'll be something that will come out later in the year.
Okay. What's that start off like October or November before
November.
the holidays? Yeah. Okay. That's good. Great show. It's good for you.
It is.
Now, how's that? What do you do with school? Just tell them I'm taking a leave of absence?
Yeah, that's what I had to do. Unfortunately, my boss is, again, supportive of what I was doing.
He would be.
So I really felt strongly that not only would be a good experience for me personally, it was also going to help refine me as a musician. And that was something I could turn around and put back into my students.
Yeah, and it's a feather in their cap, too. One of my teachers is on the road to Wizards of Winter,
We have a lot of really amazing, talented teachers.
Nice.
I'll be talking to them and realize, oh, you did this. And it's like, okay, wow, and you did that. So I'm always really impressed by the people we have there. But I basically said, yep, I'm taking a leave of absence for several weeks, made sure that my students were taken care of by other teachers. And then I came back to work and started rebuilding my schedule. So
Good for you. Good for you. Can you play something or show us something or do something? Or what do you want to do?
How would I show you how to play?
Oh, my. Oh, yeah, Dash. Yeah. Let her show you. Yeah, go ahead. All right, show me. I'm good at making a fool of myself, so why not? Do I need my glasses for that? I probably need my glasses for this one.
See how in tune we are.
I wouldn't even know how to tune one of these things. Where do you start?
Much like tuning a guitar, the way I'm used to doing it is I start with the A string, which is this one right here. The E string's very small and shrill, so sometimes it's hard to lock onto its pitch right away.
Like an E string.
Yeah, so we'll tune the A and then often use that to tune the D because you're listening for that perfect fifth right there, and then you'll tune the D to the G, and then I'll use the A to tune to the E. is usually how you do it. Or you can also just use a regular guitar tuner too. That works.
Mario, you got a snark back there? All right, what am I going to do here?
All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to handle it mostly by the neck here. All right.
Okay.
And this is, we call it the chin rest. It's a little deceiving though because it's more for the side of your jaw, like
Okay.
this. All right. So you're going to take it and you're going to support it using your jaw
Okay.
and your shoulder. All right.
Okay.
Now, if I were setting you up for playing consistently, I would give you like a sponge or a shoulder rest to give a little support there, but we'll make do for tonight.
Like a crutch. All right, so I'm taking this, and what am I doing? This?
Yep, put it further up on your shoulder, straight
here?
out from your collarbone.
Okay.
There you
Like
go.
that?
Let it sink down. See how you just scroll? There we go. Feel how it kind of hooks up under your jaw right there?
I do.
That's great right there.
I can't even see the strings, let alone feel where the notes are.
You learn to use your peripheral visions.
Oh, great. I don't have that in this left eye. That's
right.
a whole other story.
And so with your bow now, this is your bow hand now, and that's your violin hand from now
Okay.
on. Okay. So with your bow, this is how I teach my really little kids because it's easy to remember. Right. I use it for my adults too.
Okay,
'cause
I
it
got
makes
that
them laugh.
mentality. I get it.
You ever make shadow puppets?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So you're going to make a bunny.
Oh, a bunny, rock
Okay,
on.
or metal horns, whichever you
Okay.
prefer. Okay.
What am I doing with the
So
bunny?
what you're going to do is his nice sharp little teeth are going to
Okay.
come around the other side of the bow. Ultimately, you're going to try to balance it a bit like that.
That way.
Okay.
Okay, so we grab it like this.
Yep. Nice round fingers and a wrist that's going to let you flex across the strings.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, you were saying before that you can that way, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, do you push or do you pull?
You can do both. Okay?
Okay.
Why don't you start down? So this is called the frog down here. Why don't you start by placing your bow here on the string? There you go. Now you might want to give yourself a little bit of room past the mic.
Okay.
Now when you do a down bow down towards the floor, you're not going to want to pull the bow around yourself. You want to try to keep it straight on the
So, like,
strings.
follow your elbow.
Yes, so you have to there you go. And you have to let your elbow open up and your wrist flex backwards to try to keep it straight on the string.
Okay. So
Yep.
it's like,
And keep pulling it out.
and that way?
There you go.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, I'm ready, Nash.
Rock on.
Johann Sebastian Bach got nothing on me. All right, so, okay.
Yep, try another down bow. So this time you almost want to think about try to hit me with the bow, end of the bow. So you want to try to bring it straight this way.
So out like this.
Nope, you want to try to keep the tip of your bow pointed back towards the wall.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull straight out and let your elbow flex out. There we go. See how your wrist and your fingers had to flex
Yes,
and your elbow had
gotcha.
to open, okay?
Okay.
And then to do an up bow, you do exactly the
other
opposite.
way?
Put it back on the string. There you go.
Like that. Right?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
doesn't sound like two cats mating. I like that.
I think by next year we'll see you,
I could be
in
a-
the London Philharmonic.
Yeah. Bring that Craig Holt guy in here a week early. Get him on the phone.
And play little Charlie Daniels.
Yeah.
Then we're down to Georgia.
And that's a good one.
So now how do you make
I like that song.
How do you make the notes?
Use your fingers.
So I can
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that was bad.
Yeah, see, it's not at all difficult to make a sound you don't want at all.
And now do you keep that posture all the while? Mm-hmm. Like if you were playing like a really fast riff or like a fiddle type tune, would you
Yep. Now, of course, if you're using fast notes, we only use a tiny little bit of bow. We don't have room,
You don't
to
have
be
the strokes.
constantly doing this. So we
Right.
use a very fast, efficient little bow, which is why you need a relaxed, flexible bow hold to let you do all these tiny little things
Right,
right
gotcha.
here, so it translates into cool stuff up here.
Now is this like a standard size bow?
I believe so.
About
Yes.
so? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, is there a different type that you use?
When I play on my electric, I actually use a carbon fiber bow.
Okay. Yeah, otherwise it would really shred the daylights out of it, right?
It would. I would probably, with the playing that I do with my electric, I would probably break a wooden bow.
Is there anywhere we can find you, a website or anything, so people can go and
I currently do not yet have a website for myself, but that is something I should definitely be thinking towards, isn't it?
Are there any YouTube things, Wizards of Winter, that you're in that people may be able to go to and see?
I can't comment on any specifically that I can think of right now, but we do have a Wizards of Winter Facebook page.
Okay.
We also have a Wizards of Winter community page that people are welcome to go visit.
Okay.
They can find more information there.
Yeah, how about that?
All right. So now with your hand, all
Okay.
right, your violin hand now. So you have now your thumb. See how it's just an anchor there on the side of the.
Mm-hmm.
So you now have 4 fingers that you can play with. So your pointer is first finger. All right. Your middle is second. your ring is third, and your pinky is fourth finger. Okay. All right. So usually we start learning the first 3 fingers to get those in position because you have to learn how to stretch and reach forth.
It's kind of like Mario. It's kind of like making bar chords. I can feel my thumb cramping up. Okay.
So let's do this. So the string that is closest to me right now, the tiny thin little one, is your E string. Okay. So do this. Let's, without your fingers touching the string. All right. Go ahead and play a little down bow on the E, so you get the open string, just the E. Look at where your bow is. There you go. Okay. Gotcha. Now place your first finger down. You want to listen for an F sharp now. Let's see if we can get that nice whole step.
No, wait.
Look for E. Ah, hear that? Mm-hmm. Now use a little bit more pressure and a longer bow. Draw out the note. Ah. Okay, and then if you release that finger, it'll go back to the open E pitch. There you go.
Nice.
Congratulations, you just played a couple notes of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
That's right. That's right. I forgot about that. I can find that in the Mel Bay guitar primer, Nash.
There you go.
Do they have like a violin guitar primer? A violin primer?
There's several different curriculums available. Usually the one that I start out as a Suzuki curriculum. It introduces techniques in a very nice step-by-step way. Okay. And then I'll also often pull in for more classical curriculums for teaching finger techniques, reading the sheet music, things like that. Okay. I don't think Mel Bay has a violin curriculum.
Now, is there a difference? Okay, that's flat. So when you drag it that way, is there a difference in the sound if you hit it from the side? Or
yes,
is that part of how you do it, or is that a mistake when that happens?
It depends on the note I want.
Okay.
Okay, for example, if you want, I'll take that for a second and show you. So if I want a full nice note, okay, I'll use what we call the flat of the hair, like you had it. Okay. Oh, excuse me. A little bit of rosin dust, I think.
See what happens when you play it properly, you choke.
If I want a much lighter, more delicate note, what I'll do is I'll let my bow hold, turn the bow.
Okay, so
you can play on the edge of the hair. You can also place your bow closer to the bridge. If you want a scratchier, more raw sound, if you need something very light, you can move it out closer to the fingerboard. So you have a lot of variety in the way that you use it.
So is this the section mostly where you will...
Yes, this is where you will use your bow right there. Okay. And on a violin speed, you'll see the dust from the rosin on it often.
You were mentioning that when you went Facebook Live. Facebook is like such an incredibly useful tool now. And Mario, by the way, the price on that violin just went up because I played it. So I just wanted to, and Jenn played it as well. So you could say it's been played by, a YouTube, as my daughter would say, a YouTube star in a galaxy far, far away. That's my daughter. She's 21, right?
It's a good way to put it.
Your father starts his YouTube show tonight. She was in Italy. She's FaceTiming me. You do? Yeah. I'm gonna be a YouTube television star, she said, in a galaxy far, far away, Dad. I was like, oh man.
Wow. Harsh kid.
That's what I'm telling you, man. She's tough, my daughter. Tough on her father. She's funny though. You were saying how there are 2 different types of rosin that you can use.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple, it's kind of like, picking your weapon again. So, what are you looking for? What does your instrument need? What does your bow need? Generally, you can divide them into 2 types. There's a light rosin, which kind of looks like apple juice. Okay. It's like that nice, bright, clear yellow color. And then you can also get darker rosins. They tend to be a little bit stickier and a little bit heavier. So, for example, if I have a student brings in a brand new violin and a bow that doesn't have any rosin on it yet, I'll pull out my dark, sticky rosin that I use when I go play on stage, and I need it to stick to my bow because I need to be heard. I don't want to be rosining, every hour. So I'll rub some of that into their bow right away to get them a little bit of a grip.
And you were saying there is a difference if you attempt to play one of these instruments without rosin. You're not going to get any sound.
Yeah, you heard it earlier, right? It's like you get no sound out of the string string if your bow's completely unrosin, just slides right over. What the rosin's letting you do, it's kind of like, a gymnast putting chalk on their hands. It's like, they might have slightly sweaty hands, but they're getting a grip. So what that's letting you do is all the tiny little hooks and textures of the hair to stand up, stay standing up, and to grab at the string so it can vibrate properly.
How about that?
So
Okay. So you have no website, so how do we find you? How do we get in touch with you?
You can find me on Facebook.
On Facebook?
Yep.
Under
Jenn Hamilton. Jen with 2 N's. That's important.
Well, we have to start... we have to wrap things up.
Wow,
See how fast that goes?
It went very quickly.
And I think we were well behaved here tonight, Nash. What do you think?
Well behaved.
We did
well
good.
behaved, right?
We did good.
Stayed within all kinds of
Classical.
It's a classical show. What's your favorite kind of music?
It kind of depends on the mood I'm in. I like to listen to lots of soundtracks, lots of instrumentals, especially if I'm focusing on doing something else. Let's see. I've recently rediscovered my love for Dropkick Murphys.
Oh, the Murphys! Nice.
They're a nice go-to for workout or for crunching
I don't
something
think
out.
I've ever heard a woman say they like the Dropkick Murphys.
I love Dropkick Murphys.
I saw them by accident once.
Oh, yeah?
I was in Boston at the Hard Rock Cafe. And I said, because I like to go whatever major city I'm in, I like to find the Hard Rock and see what kind of memorabilia
see what's
they
going
have.
on.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm in Boston, and I go in and I sit at the bar and I'm drinking Harpoon. Ooh, which was a mistake because it's really good off tap, off the draft, and all of a sudden they start loading all this band equipment in.
Like,
and all these
cool, live
tables.
music.
Right, so I said to the bartender, "What's going on here today?" He goes,
playing?
"Oh, this is the Dennis Leary Foundation is having a benefit today, and they're having an auction of all this different memorabilia." I said, "Oh, cool." I said, "Who's the band?" He goes, "The Dropkick Murphys." I said, "Get out of here!"
I would have fallen off my chair.
I was there for the duration. You're actually on tour now, I think.
They are. They're actually going to be at the Stone Pony, I think, here in a few months.
They were here in the summer. Did you see them?
I know. I didn't get to go, unfortunately. I see that they're coming out, so maybe I can try to set some of that recording earnings aside for a ticket.
They have a new album out too, I believe.
Do they? I'll have to check it out.
Or it's coming out, or it came out, but it's recent. So, all right, that's about it, right, Nash?
Yeah,
we got to wrap it up. Well, Jen, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
The trip, and I appreciate it. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Especially when you go back out on the road with the big boys.
Yeah.
And good luck with the local bands.
Thank you.
You know, it's funny. You think you're going to be able to, after playing to like 10, 20,000 people, you think you're going to be able to play to like 12?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. As long as somebody will appreciate what I'm doing or what other musicians are doing to some extent, I'm happy to play for them.
See, that's Tom. That's the attitude, man. You got the nod of approval from Tom back there. All right. Well, next week we have Greg Holt, another violinist.
You're going to have to remember what you learned tonight. Maybe
he'll
be able to expand.
Like, let me show you. No, you're doing that wrong. He, as I said earlier, he was the violinist. A lot of different hockey teams sometimes will do this, and he was the violinist for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Used to entertain fans between periods and during, between breaks and face-offs and TV timeouts and things. And he's now living in New York, and he will be down here next Monday night.
I'll have to tune in and watch. That sounds like it's going to be good.
You're welcome to come back down if you want.
Thank you.
Studio audience is always welcome. We'll set you up over there. Look, you got a chair waiting. There's 2, so you can bring one person with you.
All right.
It's for her and you for the violin.
One for her and one for Stradivarius there. But, okay, thank you very much, Jen.
Thank you, Danny, for having me.
Anything, Matt? Anything we need to know before I go?
No, not really.
Nope. Well, there you go. Well, then until next week when it's Greg Holt, we'll see you, and thank you for tuning in to OneMore. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a lot of fun.
Good. I figured it would be.
You learned a little bit too, right?
I did. I learned a lot from